It's a sweltering summer evening in a mid-sized urban city. The streets are alive with noise, the buzz of traffic, and the occasional shout or laugh from people hanging out on the sidewalks. Despite the warmth, there's a palpable tension in the air, an undercurrent that's almost invisible but always present. The city, vibrant and diverse, is fractured by its history, divided along racial lines that run deep. In the midst of the clamor, we meet Marcus Johnson, a man in his late 30s. He's just finished a long day at work at a local advertising agency, where he's carved out a steady place despite the quiet prejudice that often hangs in the air. He's got a calm demeanor, his face weathered but gentle, showing signs of a man who's learned how to wear his struggles with dignity. But underneath, there's a quiet storm, a constant balancing act of being black in a predominantly white world. Marcus slides into the driver's seat of his car, a beat-up sedan that's seen better days. He reaches over to the passenger seat where his daughter Zoe, 8 years old, is sitting. Her dark eyes are wide with curiosity, her innocence a sharp contrast to the world she's inheriting. Marcus, smiling gently as he starts the engine. "You okay back there, kiddo?" Zoe, grinning. "Yeah, Dad. I'm just thinking about that ice cream we're getting." Marcus chuckles, his heart lightening at her excitement. His phone buzzes, pulling him out of the moment. A quick glance shows a text from his wife, a reminder to pick up dinner. He smiles softly, grateful for the normalcy, even if it's fleeting. But as Marcus pulls into the evening traffic, something shifts. There's an air of unease, something he can't quite explain. The streets, filled with life, suddenly seem empty in the wrong way. A few blocks down, the lights flicker from street to street, and he can't shake the feeling that no matter how hard he works or how hard he loves his family, this city, this world, will never see him as equal. Marcus, muttering to himself. "Stay focused, Marcus." One foot in front of the other. Zoe hums softly to the music on the radio, and Marcus's hand grips the steering wheel tighter. The day fades as they make their way home, a place of comfort and, he hopes, safety. Introduction, Part 2. But just as the city's heartbeat feels louder in the night, the sudden flash of red and blue lights behind him slices through the air. Marcus exhales, a small sigh escaping his lips. Not tonight, he thinks, but tonight it is. The police car pulls in close behind his sedan, the siren barely audible over the hum of the engine. Marcus's body stiffens, though he remains calm. He's been through this before. He knows the routine, knows what's expected of him as a black man behind the wheel. His heart races, but he takes a slow breath, trying to steady himself. "Marcus," to himself, softly. "Stay calm, stay calm." Zoe looks up, her face a mix of confusion and concern. Zoe. "Daddy, what's happening? Why are we stopped?" Marcus turns his head to her, forcing a smile, but it doesn't quite reach his eyes. "Marcus, it's nothing, sweetheart. Just a little mix-up, okay? You're safe." The officer exits the police vehicle. His uniform is sharp, his face unreadable, until he reaches the car. Officer Daniels, a white man in his early 40s, stands tall with an air of authority. His eyes scan the inside of the car, but it's clear that his gaze lingers too long on Marcus. Officer Daniels. "Evening, sir. Do you know why I pulled you over?" Marcus remains steady, his hands on the wheel, and tries to keep his voice respectful. He knows the drill. "Marcus, I'm not sure, officer. Is there a problem?" Officer Daniels pauses, eyes narrowing slightly. "Just a minor infraction. You were speeding through that stop sign back there. I need to see your license and registration." Marcus nods, his movements deliberate as he reaches for his wallet in the glove compartment. He's trying to keep things as normal as possible, for Zoe's sake. The tension in the air is thick, but he doesn't let it show. Marcus, in a calm voice. "Sure, officer, here you go." The officer takes the documents from him, still scrutinizing him with an intensity that feels personal. Marcus feels his pulse quicken, but he forces himself to remain still, to not give in to the pressure. "Officer Daniels, voice raising slightly. "Step out of the car, sir. I'm going to have to ask you to step out of the vehicle." Marcus blinks, a moment of confusion hitting him before realization sets in. This isn't just a ticket. This is something else. Marcus, with forced patience. "Sir, I've done nothing wrong. Why do I need to step out of the car?" Zoe's voice trembles from the back seat. "Zoe. Daddy?" Officer Daniels, snapping, anger flaring. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Step out of the car now." Marcus feels a surge of frustration but swallows it down. He doesn't want to escalate the situation, not in front of Zoe. Not like this. Marcus, trying to keep his voice calm. "Okay, officer. I'm getting out." He opens the door slowly, feeling every inch of his body tense as he steps into the street. He feels exposed, vulnerable. Officer Daniels circles around him, and the hostility in his voice is barely veiled now. Officer Daniels, gritting his teeth. "You're acting suspicious, like you're hiding something. Are you sure there's nothing you want to tell me?" Marcus, holding his ground, voice steady but with a trace of fear. "I'm not hiding anything. I'm just trying to go home." Officer Daniels snickers coldly. "Home? What's that supposed to mean?" The words hit Marcus like a slap. He feels the sting of injustice, the weight of systemic racism pressing down on him, heavier than ever. And yet, all he can do is stand there, powerless. The air around Marcus seems to thicken, his chest tightening as Officer Daniels stands before him, blocking any escape. He feels Zoe's eyes on him in the back seat, full of confusion and fear. The world around him blurs, the streetlights and sounds fading into the background as his thoughts focus on one thing: getting through this without losing everything. But the officer is unrelenting. Officer Daniels, mocking tone, looking Marcus up and down. "You seem awfully calm for someone who's been caught red-handed." Marcus's eyes narrow slightly, but he doesn't say anything. He doesn't want to give the officer any more ammunition. Instead, he shifts slightly, trying to block Zoe's view of the interaction. He's determined not to let her see him lose control. Marcus, with forced composure, "I'm not resisting. I just want to understand what's happening here. I've already given you my license and registration." Officer Daniels takes a step closer, looming over Marcus, and the air between them crackles with the weight of years of racial tension. Officer Daniels going sneering. "Look, I've seen people like you before. I'm doing my job, but you're making it difficult by acting like you're the one wronged here." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut, his breath hitching for a moment before he steadies himself again. There's nothing he can do now. Nothing except stand there and endure. Marcus, quietly, but with deep frustration. "You don't know anything about me. You don't know what it's like, how it feels to be treated like you're guilty just because of who you are." The officer stiffens at this, his eyes flashing with annoyance. Officer Daniels. "Who I am? What's that supposed to mean? You think this is about race?" Marcus, his voice shaking, but he holds it together. "I know what I'm being pulled over for. It's not about a stop sign, is it? You've already decided who I am, based on how I look." Zoe gasps quietly in the back, her tiny voice breaking through the tension. Zoe, innocently, fearfully. "Daddy, I want to go home." Marcus's heart clenches. He turns to glance at her, the sadness and helplessness in her eyes cutting through him like a knife. Marcus, softly, trying to reassure her. "It's okay, baby. Everything's gonna be fine." But even as he says this, he feels the weight of his own words. Is it going to be fine? Is he even fine right now? Officer Daniels, laughing bitterly. "You think you can just talk your way out of this? You're making a bigger deal out of this than it is. Just calm down and let me do my..." God. Marcus feels the simmering anger in his chest, but he knows he has to stay calm. He can't give in. Not here. Not now. Marcus, quietly, almost to himself. "Stay calm. Stay calm." The officer steps back, But the tension between them doesn't dissipate. It lingers, thick and suffocating. Without warning, Officer Daniels grabs Marcus's arm, yanking him towards the squad car. The sudden force shocks Marcus, but he tries not to resist, his heart racing, his thoughts scattering. Marcus, struggling to maintain control. "Why are you doing this? This isn't right. I didn't do anything wrong." But Daniels doesn't seem to hear him. He shoves Marcus towards the back of the squad car, his actions abrupt and forceful. Zoe sobs from the backseater enough to pierce through the noise in Marcus's head. Zoe, through tears, voice trembling. "Daddy, please don't let them take you. Please." Hearing Zoe's voice cracks something deep inside Marcus. For a moment he wants to fight, to scream, but he can't. Not like this. He needs to protect her. He needs to protect himself. "Marcus," to Zoe, his voice wavering. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." Officer Daniels roughly pushes Marcus into the back of the squad car, slamming the door behind him. The cold metal of the cage around him only makes him feel more isolated. His pulse thunders in his ears as he watches through the small window, seeing Zoe's face, her terrified, confused face. It haunts him. The sirens wail as the car pulls away, the city's glow fading in the distance. Marcus's mind races with thoughts. How did it come to this? The next day, Marcus finds himself back in his small apartment, but nothing feels right. He's still reeling from the events of the previous night, the sting of Officer Daniels's words, the roughness of the arrest. But there's something deeper, something more suffocating, the system that allowed this to happen. He can't shake the feeling that no matter how hard he works, how hard he tries to be a good father and husband, the world will always see him as less than. The arrest, the humiliation, it all feeds into something far bigger than one officer. It feeds into a cycle of prejudice, a system that won't let him rise beyond the color of his skin. Marcus is in his living room, pacing, his mind racing. His wife, Tara, sits on the couch, her face etched with concern. She's been quiet since he walked in, unsure of what to say. She can see the weight of it on him, how much it's breaking him. "Tara," softly. "Marcus, what happened out there? You're not okay, are you?" Marcus stops, pacing, and looks at her, his expression strained. The weight of everything, the arrest, the shame, the fear, hangs heavy on his shoulders. "Marcus," voice cracking, barely above a whisper. "Do you know what it feels like, Tara? To be good, to do everything right, and still have someone treat you like you're guilty before they even know your name?" Tara's eyes well with tears as she reaches for him, her hand on his arm. "Tara," with quiet understanding, "I can't pretend to know what it's like, but I do know you, Marcus. You're a good man. You've always been a good man." Marcus shakes his head, his frustration building, but Tara's gentle touch calms him just a little. The silence that follows is heavy, but it's the first time Marcus allows himself to lean into it, to feel the weight of what he's experiencing without pretending to be stronger than he is. The phone buzzes incessantly in Marcus's hand. He picks it up, already dreading what he might see, but the constant stream of notifications makes it impossible to ignore. The video of his arrest has gone viral. It's everywhere. The screen is flooded with comment after comment, each one more hurtful than the last. Marcus's name, once a point of pride at work, is now linked to accusations of aggressive behavior, disorderly conduct, and worse. He scrolls through posts, his stomach sinking as he reads each new headline, the media twisting the story into something he doesn't recognize. News anchor, on video clip, blaring through his phone's speaker. Caught on camera, a tense interaction between a police officer and a local man, Marcus Johnson, escalates into an arrest for disorderly conduct. Critics claim his behavior was combative, but others are questioning whether race played a role in the officer's decision. The words echo in Marcus's head, each one a reminder of the injustice he faces. He throws the phone on the table, running his hand through his hair in frustration. "Marcus," to himself under his breath, "they're twisting it. They're twisting everything I did." Tara, who had been silently watching him from the couch, looks up, sensing his growing agitation. Tara, gently. You can't. Control what they say, Marcus, you know that. Marcus, shaking his head, frustration rising. I'm not worried about the lies. It's the people who believe them. The people who see that video and think I'm some kind of threat. They don't care what happened before the cameras rolled. All they see is me. Tara gets up and walks over to him, putting a hand on his shoulder. She's trying to steady him, but she can see the toll the backlash is taking on him. Tara, softly. You didn't ask for this, Marcus. You didn't deserve it. Marcus, turning to face her, voice filled with raw emotion. I've been a good man, Tara. I've worked hard to make a life for us, but it feels like it doesn't matter. All that matters is what people think when they see me, and I can't change that. His voice breaks slightly, the weight of it all finally crashing down on him. The pressure, the helplessness. He feels it more than ever. He looks at his daughter's picture on the mantel, the only thing that keeps him grounded. Marcus, quietly, almost to himself. I don't know how to protect her from all of this. Tara, gently with conviction, you protect her by being who you are. You protect her by staying strong. Later that day, Marcus attends a community meeting. It's small, held in a local church basement, but it's packed with people who have been affected by police brutality, racial profiling, and systemic inequality. There's a sense of unity in the room, a shared understanding of the struggle they all face. As Marcus steps into the room, he feels both comforted and overwhelmed by the strength of those around him. He sits down at a table where a few familiar faces are already gathered. Activists, social workers, people who have spent years fighting for justice. One of them, a woman named Rhonda, notices Marcus and gives him a warm smile. She's been a longtime advocate for racial equality, and her presence in the community is a constant source of inspiration for many. Rhonda, encouragingly, as Marcus takes a seat. We're glad you could make it, Marcus. We've been following what happened, and we're here for you. Marcus, grateful but still hesitant. Thanks. It's just hard, you know, everything is falling apart. I never thought it would come to this. Rhonda, nodding, her tone calm but firm. This is exactly why we need to fight, Marcus, because it's happening every day, and it's easy for the world to turn its back, but we don't turn our back. There's a pause as Marcus takes in her words. He's quiet for a moment, reflecting on the many stories he's heard from others, stories that mirror his own experience. Marcus, hesitantly, I don't know if I can do this. If I can stand up like you all. I don't know where to start. Rhonda leans forward, her voice filled with both empathy and urgency. Rhonda, Marcus, you've already started. Your story, your truth, that's where it begins. You have to let your voice be heard. People need to hear it. And it's not just about you anymore, it's about all of us. Marcus feels the weight of her words. He knows she's right, he can no longer stand on the sidelines. But even as he resolves to take action, a seed of doubt still lingers within him. Can he really make a difference? Or will his voice get lost in the noise? Rhonda continues, her tone softening but with strength. Do it for your daughter, Marcus. Do it for all the kids who will grow up in a world that tells them their skin isn't enough. Show them there's another way. Marcus looks at her, the words sinking deep into his heart. He doesn't have all the answers, but for the first time since his arrest, he feels something like hope flicker in his chest. The media continues to flood Marcus's life, but instead of shrinking away from it, he starts to find his voice. He begins to speak at rallies, his face becoming more recognizable. He talks not just about his own experiences, but about the collective struggle of Black men and women who have faced the same kind of treatment. He stands before a crowd, sweat beading on his brow as he speaks into the microphone. The words come, easier now, fueled by anger but tempered with a growing sense of purpose. Marcus, firmly addressing the crowd. I'm not just here for me. I'm here for every person who's been pulled over, stopped, judged, just for looking like me. We can't stay silent anymore. We can't let this happen to our children. The crowd reacts with applause, some shouting words of agreement, others nodding solemnly. Marcus's heart swells as he feels the weight of their support. He feels for the first time in a long time that he's doing something that matters. The air in Officer Daniels' apartment feels heavy, the silence of the evening pressing down on him. He stands in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at his reflection. His uniform is hung up in the corner, the badge that once filled him with pride now feeling like a weight on his chest. The events of the past few days keep replaying in his mind. The arrest, the way he had treated Marcus, the way the public had reacted. He thought he was in control, that he was just doing his job, but now doubts creep in. His colleagues won't say it outright, but he can feel their judgment. They've distanced themselves from him, leaving him isolated. Daniels, muttering to himself, I was just doing my job. I was just trying to keep things under control. He takes a deep breath, but the guilt doesn't ease. It only grows. The more he replays the moments from that night, the more he questions himself. Had Marcus been wrong? Was he really being combative? Or had his own biases clouded his judgment? Daniels runs a hand over his face, trying to shake off the thought, but it lingers. His phone buzzes on the counter and he picks it up. A text from his wife. Text from Rachel. Off-screen in a blunt, no-nonsense tone. We need to talk. Daniels hesitates, his fingers hovering over the screen. He knows what this is about. The tension at home has been building ever since the incident, and now his personal life is on the verge of falling apart. He's been hiding from it, but the shame he feels is seeping into every corner of his existence. It's hard to ignore, now. He sinks into the couch, his face in his hands. He's not sure where to begin. How to explain everything to Rachel. How to explain what's happening inside of him. The man he was before this. He doesn't recognize that person anymore. The news keeps spreading, each new headline adding fuel to the fire. Marcus is sitting in his living room, his laptop open in front of him. He's trying to avoid reading the comments, but they're impossible to ignore. The video has gone viral, and the conversations around it have only intensified. Some comments are supportive, calling for justice, speaking out about the systemic issues that led to his arrest. But others are filled with vitriol, defending Officer Daniels, claiming that Marcus got what he deserved, accusing him of being too aggressive or too emotional. Marcus clicks through the posts, his heart sinking with each passing second. The vitriol is overwhelming. A mix of anger and confusion churns inside him. He's never been the kind of man to get caught up in online debates, but now he can't help himself. His phone rings and he answers without looking at the screen. It's Rhonda from the meeting. Rhonda, calmly, but with urgency. Marcus, I know it's a lot, but you can't let them get to you. You can't let the hate pull you down. Marcus, frustrated, his voice shaking. How do you do it, Rhonda? How do you keep fighting when all you get is hate? All I wanted was to be left alone to live my life. And now I'm this symbol of everything wrong with the system. People don't see me, they see what they want to see. There's a pause on the line, and then Rhonda speaks, her tone steady but firm. Rhonda. Marcus, this isn't about you anymore. This is about all of us. You've already said what needed to be said, and now it's time to keep going. You've sparked something in people. Don't let it die because of the noise. The hate will always be there, but the love, the support, that's what matters. You're not alone. Marcus exhales sharply, her words sinking in. He wants to believe her, but the pain of being misunderstood, the weight of the judgment is still heavy on his shoulders. Still, Rhonda's encouragement keeps him grounded, even as the chaos around him intensifies. Later that night, Officer Daniels finds himself staring at the reflection in the glass of his kitchen window. He hasn't heard from Rachel since the text, and the silence is suffocating. He's been avoiding the conversation, but he knows he can't keep running from it. He can't keep running from himself. He pours a drink, the amber liquid swirling in the glass as his thoughts churn. The guilt is suffocating. The shame weighs on him like a physical burden, pressing him down with each passing second. He's lost control of everything, his career, his reputation, his family, and the realization makes him feel more alone than ever. His phone buzzes and he picks it up, the screen flashing with a message from one of his colleagues. Text from Officer Martinez. Screen flashes. "You good? Man, I heard the higher-ups are pushing for an investigation. They're talking about taking you off the force." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Daniels can feel the cold sweat on his forehead, the deep ache in his chest. He takes a long gulp from his glass, trying to steady his nerves, but the anxiety keeps creeping in. Just then his wife Rachel enters the room, her face weary but determined. She's seen the change in him, the isolation, the avoidance, and she can't ignore it anymore. "Rachel," her voice quiet but firm. "Mark, we need to talk." Daniels doesn't answer. He can't. He knows the conversation that's coming, and he's not ready for it. But Rachel is here now, and there's no avoiding it. Rachel, calmly as she sits beside him. "You're not the man I married anymore. What's going on? What happened to you? What happened to us?" The question stings, but Daniels knows she's right. He's been hiding from everything. His guilt, his shame, his own emotions. And now it's all catching up to him. The man who used to believe in justice, in protecting the community, is now the man at the center of a storm that he can't control. He looks at Rachel, his voice thick with emotion. Daniels, softly, broken. "I don't know anymore, Rachel. I don't know who I am. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was making a difference. But now I don't know. I've messed everything up." Rachel doesn't say anything at first, her eyes softening with understanding. For the first time in a long while, Daniels lets his guard down, allowing himself to feel the weight of everything he's been running from. Back at the community meeting, Marcus stands in front of a room full of strangers, many of whom have come to share their own stories of injustice. He speaks now, not just for himself, but for everyone who's been silenced, for every Black person who's been judged before they even had the chance to speak. Marcus, passionately to the crowd. "I didn't choose this fight, but I'll be damned if I stand by and let this continue. This isn't just about one incident. It's about a system that was built to keep people like me down. We need to break it. We need to make them listen." The crowd erupts in applause, and Marcus feels a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead won't be easy, but he's no longer walking it alone. The days blend together in a whirlwind of meetings, protests, and rallies. Marcus stands before a group of young activists, his voice steady, but filled with the weight of his experiences. Marcus, firmly, but with deep passion. "We can't sit back and wait for change to come. We've got to be the ones to push it. Every day we're told we're not enough. Every day they remind us of our place. But I refuse to let my daughter grow up in this world and think that's all she's worth." The group nods in agreement, their faces lit by the fire of Marcus's words. There's something in his voice now, something that wasn't there before, the strength of someone who's found his purpose in the middle of adversity. Later that evening, Marcus sits at his kitchen table, his daughter Zoe sitting next to him, coloring in a book. He watches her for a moment, the soft sounds of her pencil moving across the page filling the room. His heart aches as he thinks about the world he's fighting for, a world he's determined to change for her. Marcus, softly to himself, though Zoe hears him, "I'm doing this for you, Zoe, so that you can grow up and never have to question your worth." Zoe looks up at her father, her wide, trusting eyes meeting his. There's a quiet understanding. Between them, a bond that transcends words. Zoe, innocently with a slight smile, "Are we going to make things better, Daddy?" Marcus smiles, though it's tinged with sadness. He wants to promise her everything, but the weight of the world is heavy. Still, he knows that the fight he's in is the only way to ensure a better future. Marcus, gently with resolve, "We're going to try, baby. We're going to try." Daniel sits in his car, parked in a quiet area near a park. The early Morning sun shines through the windshield, but the light feels cold to him. He's been driving aimlessly for hours, trying to clear his mind, but it's impossible. The guilt continues to claw at him, a constant reminder of his actions. His phone buzzes again, and it's another message from Rachel. He hasn't been home in 2 days. He hasn't spoken to her since their last argument. Text from Rachel. Screen flashes. I'm going to stay with my sister for a while. We need some space. Daniel's hand trembles as he puts the phone down, the message sinking in. His marriage is falling apart, and it's his fault. The weight of everything he's done feels unbearable, and he doesn't know where to turn anymore. His thoughts drift back to the night of the arrest, the way Marcus had tried to stay calm, the way he'd pleaded for fairness. Daniels had been so quick to dismiss him, to label him as combative when all Marcus had been doing was trying to keep his composure. Daniels is still holding on to the false justification that it was a necessary arrest, but deep down, he knows it wasn't. He shuts his eyes, rubbing his temples. He doesn't know how to fix it, how to fix himself. It's a chilly morning when Marcus steps out of his apartment. The sky is overcast, a sign of rain later in the day. As he walks down the street toward his car, something catches his eye. A billboard looms over the street corner, its bright colors impossible to miss. As Marcus approaches, his heart skips a beat. There, staring down at him, is his own face, smiling, confident, proud. The image has been transformed into an advertisement for a campaign promoting diversity and social justice, created by the advertising agency he works for. The billboard feels surreal, almost out of place in the context of everything that's happened. Marcus stares at it, the contrast between the image on the billboard and the reality of his life hitting him hard. The man in the photo looks like someone who has it all together, someone whose success is a testament to overcoming adversity. But Marcus knows the truth. He's been struggling. He's been fighting to survive. He hasn't had time to feel proud, to feel like he's won anything. For a moment, Marcus feels like an imposter. The man on that billboard isn't him. Or at least, not the person who's been living through this storm of systemic injustice. He takes a deep breath, trying to steady himself, but the sight of the billboard stirs something inside him. An anger mixed with pride. He's been beaten down, but he hasn't been broken. The face on the billboard isn't just a symbol of diversity, it's a symbol of resilience. As he walks away, he feels a shift inside him. For the first time in a long while, he feels something close to pride. Not in the image on the billboard, but in the man who's still standing, still fighting. It's a few days later when Marcus and Officer Daniels cross paths for the first time since the incident. The encounter happens by chance at a local cafe. Marcus is sitting at a table, flipping through a stack of papers when Daniels walks in, his face drawn and tense. He doesn't notice Marcus at first, but when he does, his entire demeanor changes. There's a tension in the air, palpable and thick, as the two men lock eyes. Daniel stands there for a moment, frozen, unsure of what to do. Marcus doesn't look away. He meets Daniel's gaze without flinching, his face hard with both anger and a quiet sense of resolve. Daniels, tentatively, unsure of himself. Marcus going coolly, his voice steady. You don't get to call me by my first name anymore. The words are sharp, cutting through the tension in the room. Daniels flinches, and for the first time he seems vulnerable, human. His eyes shift downward, guilt flooding his expression. Daniels, quietly, his voice shaky. I never meant for it to go this far. I wasn't thinking. I didn't know. Marcus, interrupting, his voice rising with the weight of frustration. You didn't know? You didn't know what? You didn't know that I'm a human being? That I'm a father just like you? You didn't know what it feels like to be treated like you don't matter? Daniels opens his mouth to speak, but no words come out. His throat feels tight, his thoughts tangled. Marcus doesn't give him the chance to continue. Marcus, with raw emotion. This isn't just about one night. It's about every day I've had to fight to be seen. It's about every time I've been told I wasn't good enough, that I didn't belong, and now you want to pretend that it's all a misunderstanding? Daniels looks away, his shame evident. For a moment, he's speechless. But Marcus doesn't stop. He leans forward, his voice a mixture of anger and weary sorrow. Marcus, finally with a quiet, forceful tone. If you ever really wanted to make it right, you'd stop pretending you don't know what's wrong with the system. You'd start listening. Daniels is silent, the weight of Marcus's words settling on him. He wants to speak, but he knows there's nothing he can say that will undo the harm he's caused. Turning point. Marcus's face on a billboard. Marcus walks down the busy sidewalk, his thoughts heavy. He sees a massive billboard towering above the street, with a face staring back at him. It's his face. The billboard promotes a campaign for diversity and social justice. Marcus stares at it for a long moment, struck by a mix of emotions. He takes a deep breath, eyes lingering on his image. There's a sense of disconnection, a feeling that the image of resilience and pride doesn't quite match the pain inside him. Marcus mutters to himself, barely audible. Marcus, quietly to himself, what is this? Who are they trying to show? He pauses, gazing up at the billboard as a few people walk by, unaware of the internal storm he's experiencing. He feels the weight of his own identity on display, a reminder of the very system he's fighting against. The campaign might be about inclusion, but all he can see is a symbol of a fight he's yet to win. Later that day, Marcus is walking out of a store when he spots Officer Daniels across the street. The officer is standing with his back to Marcus, talking to a colleague, but something about the moment feels surreal. There, in front of him, is the man responsible for the arrest. For everything Marcus has been through, he feels the tension rise inside him like a pressure cooker. Without thinking, Marcus crosses the street and approaches Officer Daniels. The officer turns to see him coming, his expression unreadable, but he doesn't move. Marcus, coldly. So, this is what it comes to? You make me a symbol on a billboard and think it's over? Officer Daniels looks caught off guard, but his face hardens as he tries to brush off the conversation. He steps back slightly, hands clenched at his sides. Defensive. I don't know what you want from me, Marcus. I'm just doing my job. Marcus steps closer, his voice rising, frustration seeping into his tone. Marcus, angry. Your job? You're supposed to protect and serve, not target and tear down. Do you even see it, Daniels? Do you see what you did, what your system did? There's a long pause. Daniel stands there, silent, trying to find the words but failing. Marcus takes another step toward him, his voice trembling with the weight of years of injustice. Marcus, emotionally, you don't get to just walk away from this. You don't get to pretend you didn't break something that can't be fixed, not by a badge, not by a campaign, not by a damn billboard. Officer Daniels shifts uncomfortably, clearly rattled by Marcus's words. He opens his mouth, but no words come out. The silence hangs heavy between them, and for a moment, it feels as if the entire city is holding its breath. Marcus, quietly, with resolve. This isn't just about me, it's about all of us, and I won't back down. Daniels stares at Marcus, the weight of his actions crashing down on him. The officer's guilt is palpable, but his pride won't let him confront it fully. He averts his gaze, unwilling to meet Marcus's eyes for too long. Officer Daniels, softly, almost to himself. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But Marcus has heard enough. He shakes his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Marcus, dismissively. It was never about what you meant. It was about what you did. Marcus takes a step back, his chest heaving as he walks away from Officer Daniels, his face hard, but his mind clearer than ever. He feels the fire inside him grow, fueled by the injustice but also by the hope that change is still possible, even for someone like Daniels. As Marcus walks off, the officer watches him go, a flicker of realization passing over his face. But he doesn't speak. The tension between them is unresolved, a chasm of history, pain, and prejudice that can't be easily bridged. The days following his confrontation with Officer Daniels, Marcus finds himself reinvigorated by the raw emotion he poured into that conversation. He is beginning to realize the power of his voice, not just as an individual, but as a symbol of something much larger than himself. He stands at the center of a movement, not just fighting for his own justice, but for the countless others who have suffered from systemic racism. At a local rally, Marcus steps up to the microphone. The crowd falls silent as he begins to speak, his voice steady, filled with purpose. He holds his head high, his gaze steady, never looking away from the sea of people in front of him. Marcus, confidently, passionately, they tried to break us, they tried to make us feel small, like our lives didn't matter. But we're still here, we are still standing. And they can't take that from us. They can't erase us. The crowd responds, with cheers and applause, but Marcus isn't done. He pauses, his words ringing with the weight of everything he's endured. Marcus, voice growing stronger. This fight isn't just mine. It's for every single person who has been told they don't belong. For every person who's been made to feel less than. We are not just fighting for justice. We are fighting for our humanity. For our right to live without fear. The crowd erupts, chanting in unity, and Marcus feels a wave of pride flood over him. He's no longer just the victim in a viral video. He's a leader, a force for change. Later that night, as Marcus walks home from the rally, he stops in front of the billboard once again. This time it feels different. His face, now a symbol of resilience, stands tall in the city skyline. He smiles to himself, a small sense of pride taking root inside him. The billboard isn't just about a campaign anymore. It's about everything he's fought for and everything he's becoming. Meanwhile, Officer Daniels sits alone in his car, parked in a quiet street. His eyes are fixed on the dashboard, but his mind is elsewhere. On Marcus, on the billboard, on everything he's seen in the past few days. The guilt that had been simmering inside him finally breaks through. He pulls his phone from his pocket, his fingers hesitating over the screen. A list of organizations fighting for racial equality is open before him. He scrolls through them, a small flicker of hope stirring inside him. He sighs heavily, then closes the phone. His face is weary, but there's something different about him now. A recognition that change is a personal responsibility, even if it's a painful one. Daniels takes a deep breath as though bracing himself for the next step. He's no longer in denial, it won't be easy. But he knows the path forward starts with confronting his own prejudices. Conclusion: a message of hope and transformation. Weeks later, Marcus stands in front of the billboard once more. The city is bustling around him, the noise of traffic and pedestrians fading as he gazes up at his image. He's come a long way since the arrest, since the viral video. His life, his purpose, has shifted. He takes a deep breath and smiles, his reflection looking back at him in the glass of a nearby store window. He's not just a face on a billboard anymore. He's a man who has found his strength, a man who has fought for his dignity, for his future, for his daughter. As he turns and walks away, the camera lingers on his face, proud, determined, ready for whatever comes next. The billboard now stands as a symbol of what's possible when someone refuses to be broken by a system that was designed to hold them down. The sound of his footsteps fades into the background as the screen fades to black, leaving a message that lingers long after the credits roll. Narrator, voiceover. It's not the world that changes first. It's the people who do. And when enough people change, the world has no choice but to follow.